And welcome back with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks in 2022. Can't wait for this weekend's card. And if you haven't checked it out already, have a look at our own Joshua Hart's full card betting guide on the site. He's offering up a bit of a different look this week because he's added in the fight previews. He's added in his best values. And at the end, he's got his own card and all sorts of great stuff over there. So a new look from our own Joshua Hart, just doing the damn thing over on the site. And if you are so inclined, you can also check out the store and pick up some of the swag that the boys wear on the shows, including the Fight Night Picks Under Armour adjustable cap. Did I take that picture myself and crop out the rest? Yes, I did. And how about the Under Armour t-shirt? All sorts of great stuff that you can pick up there over on the site, FightNightPicks.com. As we always say, let's get into it. And welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, SimBody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. A little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP, you're going to get 20% off your order with that code FNP at SimBody.com. You're really, really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at SimBody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks question mark kicks.
Boom! And just like that, we're live and set for UFC 270. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, as always, Matt Allen. On their respective socials, it's very easy. It's Matt Allen FNP. That chat is absolutely lining up. Time is not aligned. Landon Blankenship, Corey McGregor, Jeremy Abbott. It could happen 21P with an asterisk. Phoenix, Prince Vegeta's son, and so on and so forth. Just my 2 cents. And
What's
listen,
up, everybody?
rocking on. There's a new Ghost album. I'm rocking on.
Wow.
I couldn't be more excited about that coming out later on in the spring. But to focus in on these fights, I couldn't be more excited about these fights. Before we started the show, I was your complexion. I've turned red with excitement. So I couldn't be more excited, though, about UFC 270. Question mark kicks, as always, 2 hours before the prelims. We're setting it up. We're knocking it down, and we're going over those final picks and predictions, having seen the weigh-ins, having gone through the week that was. UFC 270, Fernand Lopez. Don't like it when your coach does more talking than the fighter does. However, I think this is going to be an amazing card, and we also have the fight companion, which is going to take place during the main card. You saw that fresh look on the thumbnail that's out there. I had a lot of fun with that one, but Matt, I know you're really, really excited about this card. I can't wait for it.
How could you not be? We have the heavyweight title of the world being contested tonight between two of the best heavyweights we've ever seen, and they're so different even though they're kind of similar in their MMA games. They're both primary strikers, but with Francis, if you make one mistake against this man, you're just going to be waking up minutes later with a doctor shining a light in your eye, whereas with Cyril Gane, it's a little bit more professional, you know? It's a little bit more surgical. He'll work behind the jab. He'll use his long-range strikes. I could not be more excited for this main event. And shout out to Ariel Helwani, actually. He was on the Bill Simmons podcast, just trying to, hype people up about this pay-per-view because he does some work with the Ringer now, and he set it up perfectly. He was just saying about how, Francis and his crazy backstory made his way to France. These guys used to actually train together, and it kind of made me think, this fight reminds me of Skyfall, the James Bond movie. You've got Francis, who's kind of like the villain from that movie. He used to work with James Bond and the good guys, but then he broke off. He's doing his own thing. And then you have Cyril Gane, who's like Daniel Craig. He's still working with the old team, and he's coming back to take what's theirs. I just think this fight's so much fun at the top. It does feel kind of like a Hollywood fight without Halle Berry being here to promote it like she was for a pay-per-view earlier. But the main event's great. And I haven't even mentioned the co-main event, the flyweight title, the trilogy fight to end it all off. Here's the great thing about trilogies. It's always kind of one fighter's job to respond based on what happened in the last fight. So we had the draw in the first one, amazing back and forth fight, but kind of a win for Figueiredo. I know we had the point taken away, but 3 rounds to 2, we can all get behind that. Brandon Moreno goes back to the lab, makes the adjustments, and comes back as by far the best version of Brandon Moreno we've ever seen. I think Figueiredo's done the same thing. If you've seen how bodied up he was on Instagram and how good he looked yesterday at weigh-ins, you know that Figueiredo showed up the best version of himself this fight week.
Both guys coming in at 124 for that co-main event. Bit of a surprise to me, and I think everybody else out there. Matt the Mick is hanging out, Rob Lawrence as well. This should be an amazing card. So we'll throw it on over to our Fight of the Night screen, as always presented by Manscaped. Check them out. Help out the channel, manscaped.com. With the promo code FMP, you're going to get 20% off and free shipping. So here we go. And we go with our 2, and listen, we just touched on it, but Figueiredo Moreno, the first fight was absolutely amazing, and how could you not love it? I mean, ultimately ends up as a draw. Theo C. Jr. hitting us up in the super chat saying, enjoyed you guys with Clint. We were on the Die Hard MMA podcast this week, myself and Clint. We were of the similar mind on a big-time fight on this main card, big-time underdog odds, and Theo, so I'm glad you were able to check that one out. I was also on another podcast on Wednesday night with John and the man himself, Legs. A lot of fun this week. But when we look at this fight, the first fight obviously closer than the second one because in the second one you had a finish. But it's odd to see that in a second fight where Figueiredo was such a big favorite, now in the third fight, it's Moreno kind of shifting and taking those odds back.
I mean, he did get choked out the last time we saw these guys in the cage together, so it is understandable, but I think we are going to see a much better version of Figueiredo in this fight than we saw in the second one. Now, what I will say is, he might not win. I don't want to give away the prediction too early. I guess if you guys are here, you probably watch the prediction videos, but I think we'll see a better Figueiredo than the second time around. So I think this fight will look a lot closer to the first one than it will the second, but I think it's still going to result in a fight of the night, no matter what the result is.
Should be an awesome fight, and we'll switch it on over. Our second pick, I mean, Cody Stamann, Said Nurmagomedov. At the start of the week, both of us with the man himself, Said Nurmagomedov, and it's such an interesting fight because it is a clash of styles. For Nurmagomedov, he has interesting takedown defense, I would say. I mean, if you look at the fight against Barcelos, a lot of them were a lot higher up on the body. Cody Stamann, not necessarily a fighter like that, and sometimes he will be willing to throw hands, and if you look at it for Stamann, he can throw that wet blanket type of approach. I saw it over there by Mason Browning saying that he could go out there and do that. It's going to be interesting to see what we get out of this one, but Bantamweight's absolutely on fire. I can't wait for this one. And Donald E. Guys hitting up the super chat. Big time one. Wow. Thank you so much. The support, it means a lot to us, saying, let's get into it, boys. High fives from Anaheim. Donald, high five to you. You're the MVP now.
Thank you very much. This fight is great, though, because here's the thing about Cody Stamann. We kind of know what he's really good at. He's great at wrestling. He's an okay enough boxer to get into wrestling range, but those are the limitations of his game. If he's going to win this fight, he's going to have to show us something new, and I think that's why this fight is going to be so much fun. I can openly admit this, though. I was the one who told Craig to put this in the Fight of the Night screen, and I can say that there's a 50% chance that this fight is terrible. Like, awful. Probably the worst fight of the night, not actually the Fight of the Night, because if Cody Stamann does get it his way, let's say he is able to jab his way into range and just do double leg takedown after double leg takedown after double leg takedown, we're probably just going to see a 15-minute wrestling match with Cody Stamann slamming the hammer. So I think there's a chance that this fight's very bad, but I think if Nurmagomedov's able to really incorporate his scrambles and force this to become a stand-up fight, it could be phenomenal.
Should be an amazing fight, and I can't wait for it. And if you can't hit up the super chat, just toss us a like. It would really mean a lot if you do that. You tell a friend and you subscribe, because we have the Fight Night Picks companion later on tonight. We're not a bunch of comedians, but we do have a lot of fun.
We do.
So, Matt, with question mark kicks, if this is the first time that you're tuning in, we go all the way down to the bottom of the card, work our way back up to the top, preview the fights, go into the chat. We also touch on the Instagram votes that we have in our story for every single one of these fights, and we see who's agreeing, who's disagreeing, and ultimately what the pick is. And maybe some of them have changed throughout the week. I can say that I have two. I actually have two on this card that I'm changing, which doesn't normally happen, and you can question my integrity for it, but I did say earlier on in the week that I was on the fence about a couple of them. So, Matt, let's do that. Let's go down to the bottom, and we have Kay Hansen who isn't going for the straight hair look anymore. She's got the curls. She's taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. And Matt, in this fight, it's really interesting because for the Canadian in Jasmine, she is a Canadian freestyle wrestling silver medalist, and she really does incorporate that into her game. You look at her fight over on Dana White's Contender Series from this past summer, and she had a 10-8 round if I've ever seen one. And then in the second round, it was not a 10-8. She got 10-9. And then in the third round, I thought she got 10-9 too. I thought that fight was a draw. But ultimately, it wasn't. And Jasmine booked her shot into the UFC because she had a banger of a fight. And that's what the boss likes. So really, if you look at it for Jasmine, she's very, very long for this division of 125. And she is a flyweight. She had that one fight at strawweight, her lone loss on her pro career, to Elise Reed. And it was a good back and forth fight. It really was a lot of fun if you missed it. But she's coming in here fit and ready. She is still a lean 125, definitely. A very long fighter. And for Kay Hansen, making the move up to flyweight, her first two in the UFC at strawweight, I thought she looked really good on the scale. So good for her. And really, the size discrepancy didn't scare me too much. I know MPTV was going to rag on us, saying that Jasmine is way too big for Kay. Don't disappoint me, Matt. Pick her. He also wanted me not to disappoint and pick her as well, I guess. But when I look at this one, Deco hitting us up in the super chat. Love your picks every time they come out. Deco, thank you so much for hitting up the super chat. Tristan is saying War Canada. But Matt, I didn't pick Canada at the start of the week, and I'm hard-pressed to pick Canada now.
Here's the problem. If Kay Hansen can get one takedown, she can get 5. And her cardio is good enough to where I do think she can keep that kind of sustained takedown output throughout a solid 3-round fight. Now, I'm not saying she can get in there with like Marina Rodriguez tomorrow and then start wrestling with her for 25, but I think she can get it done against Jasmine tonight. Now, if Jasmine is able to start defending those takedowns, digging underhooks, especially early on, and forcing out those long shots of Kay Hansen, then maybe she will be able to beat her up on the feet quite a bit. I just don't think she does have the wrestling to keep up with Hansen, and even if she can defend a couple takedowns early, I don't think she'll be able to do it in the second and the third round, and I don't see either fighter getting a finish.
Well, and this is a really, really tricky one. Like, you look at it at Fight Night Picks, 62% of the fans going with Hansen, and again, Jasudavicius, if she's able to defend the first takedown, I can see her having a ton of success, especially being the longer fighter. Rob Lawrence saying, I hope Jasmine wins, but going with Kay Hansen. Clint Eastwood going, talking about Marina. Are we talking about Marina Rodriguez? She is the hotness at 115. But Matt, we look at the odds for this one. Jasudavicius open to minus 105. She's plus 179 right now. Kay Hansen open to minus 115. She's a minus 217. And if you look at it for fight goes the decision, that is the favored outcome at a minus 235. So for me, I'm going with Kay Hansen. I see the question over there, time is not aligned. At what point does size become a significant factor? Jasmine is a lot larger. It all depends on the fight. It really does. It's hard to give a really good specific example. There's some heavyweight fights. There's some fights in the smaller weight classes. Can you give us an example?
Yeah, I can give you a bunch. Marcel Fortuna once knocked out Anthony Free-Trade Hamilton at heavyweight, even though he weighed 60 pounds less. Now, I understand it normally has more to do with the grappling side of things than striking, because this is the way I look at size discrepancies in fights. In boxing, it doesn't matter at all. You can move up 10 weight classes and still be a world champion, because speed matters a lot more, and you can't really get weighed down by the grappling. Now, I worry about it a little bit in this, but I question Jasmine's wrestling background a little bit. That's all I'm going to say. And I do think Kay Hansen, her MMA game is a lot more suited to be a grappler, and if she is able to, like I said, get on top and really do damage early on, I just don't think Jasudavicius has the cardio to keep up for those 3 hard rounds. So sorry. So if Hansen, again, if she has any success in the first round, I think she'll keep on rolling. And even if Jasmine wins the first round, I worry about what version of her we'll see in the second and third.
I see Theo saying Jasmine is going to open up that scar tissue from distance. That's something that we touched on in the video earlier on in the week. But both of us in this one going with Kay Hansen, right?
Yeah, but don't put any money on this fight. Like, there's way too many question marks surrounding both fighters.
All right, Matt. We'll move into our next one. And Deco makes a great point, too, saying Kay's last fight's the only reason I'm unsure of Kay winning this. And so you pick Jasmine. 100%, that one is fair. Our next fight, we have Silvana Juarez taking on Vanessa Demopoulos. This is another one where Demopoulos, a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller. And if you look at her, I wonder if she could make atom weight. I think it would be a tough cut, though. In her last fight at 125 on short notice, taking on JJ Aldrich, she got totally outdone in every single aspect of the game. Now, this fight is a clash of styles. Silvana Juarez has some very, very technical striking, and this is one of those fights that could definitely accentuate it. And for Vanessa Demopoulos, very good with her grappling once it hits the mat. It's just, can she get that initial takedown? So that is really the one that I look at. And when I look at the odds for this, it is a tricky one because, listen, you consider Vanessa Demopoulos, you look at her, she opened a plus 100, she's minus 143 right now. You look at Silvana Gomez Juarez, open a minus 130, she's a plus 120. So the odds have flipped since the open. Do you have any other strong feelings as this week's gone on? Because this was a fight that was announced a few weeks ago. It was supposed to happen last weekend, and then they shuffled it to this card.
There's a version of this fight where Demopoulos just kind of like walks forward, needs punches for 14 minutes, and then gets stopped at some point. Like, there is a version out there where Vanessa, it's kind of the worst case scenario, but she's not able to get the takedown. She can't strike herself into range, and she just kind of a sitting duck at that point. Now, with Gomez Juarez, I don't think she has like crippling power on her shots. You don't really have to worry about the one-punch knockout power. It will be more of an accumulation if she is able to really get going with her striking. But again, this fight, very similar to the last one, comes down to the wrestling. And if Demopoulos can get her wrestling going early or get the takedowns early, I think she will be able to have quite a bit of success. But again, I don't know about you, Craig. I worked too hard to put any money on a Vanessa Demopoulos, Silvana Gomez Juarez fight. So again, I don't love where the odds are, honestly, because for me, I don't look at either one of these fighters having a massive ceiling in this division. And I don't say that to be mean, but when I look at these fighters, we do the 5-on-ins for fighters. I don't think either one of them will have a 5-on-in if we're being completely transparent. So for me, it's very hard to judge and predict a fight accurately if there's just so many unknowns about both fighters.
Michael Blanco, stick around to find out. But when you look at this fight, the thing that does scare me, if you look at Demopoulos' fight against Sam Hughes, I didn't really talk about it in the overall video for this fight. Sam Hughes is teeing off, especially on the feet, and it was all Demopoulos on the ground who ends up getting that crazy inverted triangle win. So if we look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram for the total votes on this one, 207 for Demopoulos to 193 for Juarez. So it's 52% Demopoulos to 48% going Gomez Juarez. I have Demopoulos, but again, not the strongest of feelings on this fight.
I think Demopoulos will be able to get it done. I kind of flip-flopped a little bit during the week, but I'll stick with the pick because I do think the wrestling is going to matter so much. Now, if that is the case and Demopoulos looks awful and gets tired early, then she probably will get TKO'd at some point, but I think she'll be able to get at least one takedown and make a lot of use of it.
You've got Phoenix who's saying, I've got Silvana only losses to high-tier competition, and that is true. I mean, she took on, who was it, Ariane Lipski with KSW for the belt, and then had that swollen eye like Rodolfo Vieira against Saperbek Safarov. And just my 2 cents saying Silvana actually does have power. She dropped Lipski and Poliana, and I agree with you on that. I disagree with you. But that's fine. Matt, let's move on to our next fight, and I can't wait for this one. Matt Frevola taking on Genaro Valdez. And for Matt Frevola, don't let guys that come up with you on stage stand on the scale at ceremonial weigh-ins. It's not cool. It's weird. Everybody thought it was weird. I thought it was weird. Matt Frevola coming into this fight against Genaro Valdez is a big favorite, and it scares the bejesus out of me. Prince Vegeta's son, Fight Night Picks are weekly, hardworking fight encyclopedias.
Thank you.
I definitely appreciate that. And the Claw 28, you're very nice as well. So Matt, when we look at this fight, this one is, you can't really say clash of styles, because if you do look at it, for Genaro Valdez, he will wrestle, but it's high crotch single leg, and we're putting all of our body, every single ounce of our fibers into that takedown, and then he's a little sloppy with his jiu-jitsu. He just goes for everything. It's submission over position. Matt Frevola is the opposite. Matt Frevola will wrestle and wrestle and wrestle your socks off, get that top position, spend some time in your guard, switch over to full guard, land a couple of shots. He really does kind of try and pick guys apart. So it is different that way. The one thing that does scare me in this fight, and I saw it on the Joshua Hart full card betting guide at fightnightpicks.com. He kind of thought when it comes to this fight, the real pick here is maybe Valdez by knockout, and that's the only one that really has value because it's over plus 300, and that's a very likely outcome. If Polo Reyes and Terrence McKinney can knock you out quick, who's to say Genaro Valdez can't?
I mean, Terrence McKinney's better than Polo Reyes. I'll at least give him that. You're right with the whole assessment of this fight, but again, betting money on Matt Frevola to win this would be like saying Carmelo Anthony's going to score over 20 points tomorrow. Like, it could happen, and you might be confident in it with his scoring ability, but there's just so many question marks at this stage of his career, because with Frevola, he has become one of those 50-50 fighters where it's, okay, I win a drawn-out decision, or I get stopped in brutal fashion, and there isn't much of an in-between. Now, yes, he's been able to stay competitive with some of the top wrestlers in this division. I always point back to that Arman Sarukian fight where, let's be honest, he was able to keep it fairly competitive against one of the top guys in this division. But I worry about him in this matchup because if Valdez is the best version of what we saw on the regional scene, he very well could go in there and just blow the doors off Frevola. Hurt him with a big shot, maybe submit him on the way up, get one of those nice impressive finishes. But to me, I gotta go with the steadier guy, and I do think that the steadier guy is going to be Matt Frevola. Now, again, I just said Frevola is steady, and I'm kind of contradicting myself right there, but I do think if he's able to implement his wrestling, like we saw in this Rukian fight, even though he was on the losing end of that decision, I think he'll be able to win this one.
Yeah, when I look at this one, I mean, maybe Valdez is able to get some crazy knockout in the first round, but for me, I do like the consistency of Frevola. Now, has he lost his last 2 fights? Yes, he has. And when you look at the odds for this one, I mean, again, this is another one that I stay away from. Valdez coming in here at a plus 168. He's the second fighter from Entram Gym on this card. Silvana Gomez Juarez another. You have Morales, and then you have Brandon Moreno. And if you look at it for Matt Frevola, he's a minus 202. So for me, again, I'm staying away from it. I'm staying away from a lot of the fights on this card. Valdez, 57% of the fans at Fight Night Picks have him to get the win. 43% have Frevola. I'm sticking with the wrestling of Frevola. I think he's going to be able to get it done with that.
If you like Valdez, he's probably going to win in spectacular fashion. And if he does get the win, it's going to be one of those, like ESPN MMA retweets it 1,000 times and it'll be all over Twitter. But I just think Frevola's wrestling is going to win out. Again, he could get finished. It's happened before. I'm sure it's going to happen again, but I do like him in this one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, Zero Bob going with Valdez. You've got Rob Lawrence saying Valdez. You've got Chad saying Valdez. A lot of people on Valdez, and you guys could be right, and we could definitely be wrong, because again, Frevola does have the propensity to get knocked out in impressive fashion, or I guess less than impressive fashion. So we'll move on to our next one, Matt. Tony Gravely taking on Saimon Oliveira, and I kind of did a little bit of a scan out there, and I looked to see what a lot of people were saying, and a lot of people are in agreement. If Saimon Oliveira is going to win this fight, it's by guillotine, it's by Darce choke, it's going to be by some impressive kind of submission off of a mistake by Tony Gravely, and then anything other than that, Gravely might get the win.
Without a doubt. Like, Gravely is the ultimate aim big, miss big, aim small, miss small fighter, because he lands massive overhands when he does try to land them, when he does let his hands go. His wrestling is very high energy. I think we could agree on that. Nothing he does requires just a small amount of energy, and that worries me, because when you look at his record, there are a lot of submission losses on there, and a lot of those losses come because he does get tired, goes for a big takedown, and then ends up in a guillotine, which Saimon Oliveira is extremely good at going for. So this is one of those fights where there's a clear path to victory for Oliveira, but I think Gravely's quite a bit better at everything, if I'm being honest. And when you look at Oliveira, he didn't impress me a ton on the regional scene. His record is a little bit padded, and now he does have great wins, and that's something we always say. It doesn't always matter who you beat, it's how you beat them. He does have a lot of finished wins on his record. I just think having your first fight against Tony Gravely is a really, really big step up in the UFC.
Yeah, and that really is the thing that scares me. I mean, with Oliveira, really, really high tie guard. He does throw some nice leg kicks. He throws nice hooks. He really does have, I'd say, a complete game, but there's just some mistakes that I kind of picked up on that I didn't necessarily like. I'm eager to see how that takedown defense fares against a guy like Gravely, because if you're going for a lot of defensive submissions, either you get that defensive submission, you're able to submit Gravely impressively, or you get taken down and then you got to fight your way back up to your feet. So winning a fight against Jose Alday by split decision over on Contender Series, a little bit of a head scratcher. Prospect at over 30 with 21 pro fights. It just kind of gives me a little bit of pause. Oliveira coming in here, opened at a plus 145. He's plus 201. And for Tony Gravely, open to minus 170. He's minus 248. And if we look at Fight Night Picks, let's see the total votes for this one. 66% Gravely, 34% going with Saimon Oliveira. So I think it's going to be a really fun fight. I have Gravely. I think he's going to be able to, like, for some reason, I have Matt Frevola. Just with the takedowns, I think Gravely's going to be able to get it done that way and win. Now, the question is it going to be by finish? Is it going to be by decision? I do have a hard time with that. I see a lot of people taking Gravely by finish, but I could see Gravely going out there, just grounding him out and making it like a grinding decision.
I think you're right, but I could see him getting a TKO if he is able to land a big shot early in the fight, because Oliveira does tend to back out with his hands down and chin up. Not a great combination to have in your striking defense. So let's say he is reacting a lot to the takedowns of Gravely, then that's going to open up a big shot to the head. So I think there is an opportunity for Gravely to get the finish, but we are both in agreement. Gravely quite heavily in this one.
Yeah, going with Gravely. I mean, but listen, there's a great opportunity for Oliveira, so you let us know who you have over there in that comment section. Matt, we'll move into our next fight. Jack Della taking on Pete Rodriguez. And I started the week off, and I'm dead serious. I don't have anything negative to say about Dead Game, Pete Rodriguez. He's knocking guys dead on the Icon series, I guess you could say. 4 fights as a pro, knocking guys out before, you've even had time to get into your seat with your pop and your popcorn. And he's a guy that puts everything into his shot, so it's a lot of fun to watch. So if you have Dead Game Pete Rodriguez, Rodriguez, you let us know over there in the comments section, because it is one of the more fun fights, I think, coming up with Jack Della. Great boxing, interesting game once it touches the mat, but I really do love his footwork, the movement of his head, but sometimes he is a little hittable. So it is a fight that Pete Rodriguez could go out there like Jeremiah Wells was able to do against Warley Alves, like McKinney was able to do against Frevola. Go in there, impress everybody, and knock him dead. I mean, YouTube is #1 saying Pete's amateur record has been overlooked. 6 knockout wins, was an amateur. Yeah, and he was able to do that too. A few losses there, but hey, you got to build your amateur record. It is what you need to do. So I absolutely love this one. Theo is saying I have dead game for my long shot. And Prince Vegeta's son saying I picked Pete. And a little bit uncertain. So what are we saying?
This is one of those fights where what the odds are on Pete Rodriguez, they're very tempting because all of his fights feel like they're very much a 50-50. Either he wins by knockout very, very fast, or he's probably going to get dragged into the deep waters and we're going to see some holes in his game be exposed. And with Jack Della, this fight reminds me a little bit of kind of like when they were building up Greg Hardy. And I know that's a weird name to bring up right now, but Greg Hardy was very raw in his MMA game, even when he first signed with the UFC. And he was a decent case of them building up a guy slow. They had him on Contender Series a couple times. They gave him a regional contract. Like, they built him up very slow, and then we saw the limitations of his game. But every time we saw him out there, he faced a different fighter who had a different wrinkle to his game. Like, when he fought Yorgan de Castro, that was kind of like the leg kick skill check that he had to pass. And okay, if you can get past that, then we know a little bit more about you. For me, this is just how good defensively is Jack Della with his head movement. Because let's say that is a big liability, and it's something we both talked about in his game. Then this is the fight where it's going to cost him. Now, if he is the best version of himself, and you're going to hear us talk about that a lot, if this guy's the best version of what we think he is, then he'll probably blow the doors off of Rodriguez. He'll probably implement his wrestling. He has the much better cardio, and he is the better mixed martial arts fighter. But for me, this fight's so volatile because if you look at any of Rodriguez's fights, you realize that he can shut your lights out at any second of the fight from either stance, from any range. He's just that explosive.
Yeah, and this really is where it gets interesting because listen, if Pete Rodriguez wins by decision, I'm going to drink a bottle of hot sauce. And I would be incredibly surprised if it happens. But if it happens, I'll be true to my word. So let's look at the odds for this one just to get an idea of what people are thinking here. Jack Della is a pretty big favorite, a -355. Pete Rodriguez coming in here plus 276 on best fight odds. And if you look at it at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, 77% going with Jack Della Maddalena. So I do have Jack Della in this fight. I do think as far as trying to look at this one and really think, kind of analytically, I mean, Jack Della, a lot higher output when it comes to boxing on the feet. I absolutely love that. I love the movement side to side, forward and backwards. I love the core movement, and I think if he can just get out of the way of a few of those big shots, then he's going to be able to get his timing down and get the win. But again, Pete Rodriguez is one of those guys. I see Star Smith saying Pete gonna take it, but I believe Della Maddalena by decision. Tevin saying I got Pete by decision. He's going to be laughing at me. And Rob Lawrence saying Pete is tough as nails, but I'm going with Jack. So I'm going with, the man himself, Jack Della Maddalena. But this is a really, really tough one.
I like Della Maddalena as well. Now, again, if he got knocked out, like, in a brutal way 50 seconds into the fight, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But he is the better mixed martial artist, and 9 times out of 10, I know we'll talk about the main event here soon, you have to go with the better mixed martial artist.
All right, Matt. So both of us going with Jack Della Maddalena, and a lot of people hitting up that super chat, Matt. We're almost to 500 viewers and only 96 likes. You got to toss that like up there. It would certainly be appreciated. Matt, we'll go into our next fight. We have Raoni Barcelos taking on Victor Henry. Raoni is a giant favorite on this card. He's one of the biggest, and he opened at a -350. He's -510 right now. If you look at it for Victor Henry, opened a plus 285. He's plus 378. This is one of those ones where you look at a guy in Victor Henry, he does a lot of the things that Raoni Barcelos does very well. And Victor Henry, similar to Saimon Oliveira, look at the submissions this guy's able to pull off. He comes from a very impressive gym over there with the War Master. You don't see Mr. Barnett in UFC colors very often, but when you look at this fight, Matt, I mean, Raoni Barcelos, he's had great fights. Look at his win over a guy who's on the main card in Sair Nurmagomedov. Look at his loss to Timur Valiev his last time out, which is a surprise to a lot of people. This fight was booked, about a month ago, and now we end up here. Dimitar is saying Raoni is a jobber. He doesn't even have a nickname. Listen, Dimitar, yeah,
that's how it works.
That's true. I mean, he's coming out of Pedro Hizzo's gym, too. So a couple of big-time heavyweights in the corners for both of these guys. I can't wait for this fight.
I gotta be honest, I think Raoni Barcelos wins this fight 10 times out of 10. Now, that's come back to bite me before, and I haven't used the L word. because that word always ends up destroying anything related to this channel. But when you have a big underdog, I normally try to look at their game and find the one strength that they have over their opponent who's the big favorite. What does Victor Henry do better than Raoni Barcelos? I don't think he's the better power puncher. I don't think he can strike for volume as well as Barcelos can. I don't think he's as good as Barcelos at scrambling or wrestling. I find very few ways where I can see Victor Henry going out there and getting a convincing win. Now, could he finish Barcelos in the first 30 seconds? Yeah, because MMA is a crazy sport with 4-ounce gloves. Anything can happen. But I really do think Barcelos is the much superior mixed martial artist in this fight.
I mean, I really do like the submission game from Victor Henry. You look at it, 21-5 is the total record. He's got 8 wins by submission. He's got 6 by knockout, 7 by decision. And if you want to see a premier fight, if you get the opportunity before this card to watch one, watch his fight against Masanori Kanehara, where he knocks him out in the second round. The first round is a lot of fun. His last time out was back in, it was the end of October 30th, the day before Halloween. And he was able to get the win over Albert Morales, UFC veteran. Lionheart is saying Victor Henry by submission.
I'll remember you, Lionheart, if that happens.
Scott is saying Barcelos for the win. Matt's going to have to give Lionheart a shout out if Victor Henry wins. I have Barcelos because I think he's going to be able to pitter patter on the feet, move side to side, get in and out a little bit quicker. But if Victor Henry gets the win here, that would be great for an underdog.
I think this is D-Rod Preston Parsons. I really do. I think Barcelos is going to win this one.
Matt is going with Barcelos.
Every now and then you have a short notice opponent where I just got to be honest, and I don't find a lot of areas where they're going to be able to win, and this is one of those times.
All right, Matt. Well, we move into the main card portion of this show, and we have Trevin Giles taking on Michael Morales, and we'll be covering this fight on the Fight Night Picks Companion. It starts 15 minutes before the pay-per-view card. We'll be with you throughout the fights. You can pause your action, sync up with us, and we can talk the fights, and we'll do our best to head on into the chat as we are right now. So when we look at this fight, Matt, I said it at the start of the week. I mean, Trevin Giles, he looked great on Instagram, but it all depends on Friday when you step in on the scale and when I see these guys face off on Friday night. And I get the opportunity to see it. And with all of that and everything that happened during the week, we went on the Die Hard MMA podcast. Clint was saying he's got Giles. You had Giles. And then I went on the show with John and Legs. They had Giles. And I was the only guy with Morales, 3-time Ecuadorian national champion wrestler. He's got Muay Thai in his background. His parents are great judokas.
Is the Ecuador known for the wrestling?
And then when I looked at Trevin yesterday, I went, yeah, I was 50-50 throughout the week. I was honest with everybody on every show. And then finally, when I got the chance yesterday to see it, I have Trevin Giles in this fight. And I really do think he's going to be able to get the win because I think he's a much superior striker. As long as he doesn't come out in the first round like Aldierte Sanchez that he did in his last fight, even though he had success with it until he didn't, I think Giles is going to be able to defend some of those takedowns, tire down a guy who is very, very good at every aspect. I think he's just still a little green behind the ears is Morales. So I have Giles, but I did say this. Throughout the week, Giles has actually become the favorite in this fight. He was the underdog at the start of the week, who you had. But Matt, for me...
Got money on him at the start of the week, too.
Well, look at that. But I do have Trevin Giles in this one. I think it is such a tough one to try and figure out because Morales has all of those attributes, and he is very young, but the level of competition just isn't there. So for those reasons, switching over to the man himself, Trevin Giles. But I absolutely love this fight.
Has Ecuador ever won, a medal at the Olympics for the wrestling?
We'll have to look into it.
I don't really look at that country as a wrestling powerhouse, that's all. I think Giles is going to be able to defend the necessary wrestling attempts from Morales, and I do think he's going to box his ears in the close range, because with Morales, he does require a lot of his setup strikes and a lot of his longer distance strikes to really make the most of his game, and if Giles can close that distance, get on the inside, and really make this a boxing match, I know he lost in the close range against Dricus du Plessis, but the different levels of power that Dricus du Plessis has compared to Morales in this fight, they're on another planet. So I do worry a little bit. Again, like you said, Morales is a very well-rounded game, so he is very good all over, but I like Giles for his inside boxing, and he looked great on the scales too. Let's say we do see a better version of Trevin Giles at welterweight than we saw at 185 pounds. He could be a genuine problem. No one thought Robert Whittaker was going to be any good when he moved up to middleweight, because he had lost to Court McGee, he had lost to Wonderboy. He was just another guy who changed weight classes. I could really truly see this as being sort of a good career trajectory for Trevin Giles. I think we're going to see the best version of him tonight.
All right, Matt. So yeah, when we look at this fight, Prince Vegeta's son was saying, no, hold on, Giles is actually the underdog. I made a mistake, and listen, we're splitting hairs, Prince Vegeta's son, because on some sites, he actually is the favorite. On some of them, they're at par. Giles is minus 108. Morales is a minus 112. So it is very, very close. And when we look at Fight Night Picks, Matt, for the total votes on this fight, let's see. There we go. 55% going with Giles to 45% who have Morales. So it is a very, very close fight. If you pick either fighter, I can definitely understand. Because like I said, I was on the fence at the start of the week. I had Morales. I'm switching over to Giles. But I can't wait for this fight. I think this is going to be a really fun one.
It should be a good one because there's a lot of prospects fighting on this card. But Morales is getting by far the toughest competition in his UFC debut. But it should be a great fight.
And oh, by the way, now you're on the main card of the pay-per-view. Have fun with that one. He is one of 2 Entram Gym fighters on the main card. So now we have our next fight, Said Nurmagomedov taking on Cody Stamann. I can't wait to hear what people are thinking and saying about this fight because it really is a clash of styles. For Said Nurmagomedov, really, really slick boxing from either stance. He pumps a really nice jab out there by keeping his head back and out of danger. Throws those spinning attacks a lot. And listen, I really do like Said Nurmagomedov's game. We're going to talk about it in the next fight, Fiallo, who's taking on Pereira. But when you look at Nurmagomedov against Striegel, it was just like Fiallo when he was taking on, Stefan Sekulic. We're going for that single leg. Boom, you're knocked out, pal. So I really do like Said Nurmagomedov. The crazy thing for him is, though, listen, he doesn't have a lot of experience in the UFC, and all of a sudden he's favored to beat a guy that's like fringe between 10 and 20 is Cody Stamann. That really does interest me. He's been out for a very long time, so Said Nurmagomedov, he is the favorite, but Cody Stamann, man, he has been an interesting guy to pay attention to throughout his UFC career because he's one of those guys who just hasn't really been able to beat that top upper echelon of competition. He lost to Merab his last time. He lost to Jimmy Rivera the time before that back in the summer of 2020. His last win was in June of 2020 over Brian Kelleher, a win over Turbo Perez, a win over Brian Caraway, Tom Duquesnoy, and Terrion Ware, who had the toughest run in the UFC.
But my point is, like, what's Cody Stamann's best win? Like, he's good and he had a close fight with Song Yadong, but other than the Brian Kelleher fight, I think very highly of Brian Kelleher and his skills, but Cody Stamann's never really proved that, like, yes, I am a top 10 talent. Now, I do agree with you. He is one of those weird fighters who on his best day could probably be, like, the 7th ranked guy in the division, and on his worst day, he could probably get knocked out by some guy of Contender Series who has a lot of hype behind them. It's just, he is so frustrating because the first version of Cody Stamann, similar to Ben Simmons that we've ever seen, is the same version we get now. And yes, there might be minor improvements here and there, but he's still going to do the same stuff that got him to the dance. And I understand, when you are a specialist in the way that Cody Stamann is, you're going to use your best tool over and over again, but he never really evened out the rest of his MMA tool set. Now, if he does add more to his boxing, and if he is able to use his boxing in more of a pressuring way, then he could have success against Nurmagomedov, but I think this fight, more than any other on the card, comes down to speed, and I think Nurmagomedov is the much faster fighter between these two, especially on the feet, and I do differentiate the two a little bit because I think he's going to be the faster guy on the ground too, because with Stamann, his grappling's good, but it's a lot of, not, I hate to say lay and pray, but let's be honest, he has some lay and pray in his game, whereas Nurmagomedov always wants to scramble. From the second you get your hands wrapped around him, he's always trying to move, so I think the scramble is going to be really fun in this fight, but I do think Nurmagomedov's going to be the much better striker between
To me,
these
it
two.
all depends on the feints of Nurmagomedov. If he can really get Stamann to bite early and whip those leg kicks out there from long range like he can definitely get the win. I said I was going to switch 2 picks on this card. Cody Stamann's the guy because when I went back and I really thought about it, what fights has Nurmagomedov really struggled with in the UFC? There's only one. When he fights Raoni Barcelos. And Raoni is a guy, he's on this card, and we talk quite a bit about him.
Wily.
But he's one of those guys, he's wily, he has good boxing, he has good kicks of his own coming out of his ORVT, he has those great leg kicks. But in that fight, it's the spins and everything. And when Nurmagomedov is spinning and Barcelos is able to pick up on it, really think about it, he locks the body, he's able to get the back, and at one point he was almost able to sink in a rear naked choke. Not a part of Cody Stamann's game.
At all.
But there's one of those kicks that he spins out there, Barcelos grabs it, takes him down, and I really do think that Cody Stamann's going to be able to get a takedown and takedown and takedown in this fight once he goes for it. So the odds for this one, Nurmagomedov open to minus 245, he's a minus 191 right now. If you look at it for Stamann, open to plus 210, he's plus 160. If we have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes, it's 72% Nurmagomedov to 28% Stamann, but I just really do worry about that takedown defense and just those spinning attacks kind of catching Nurmagomedov. But both of these guys with a win here, I would think ranked competition next.
I would hope so.
You have to win, very impressively on this main card if you want to get one of those bigger names like a Dominic Cruz or somebody.
Well, just the bantamweight division's on fire right now, so you really do have to stand out if you want one of those sort of legacy fights, if you will. Because, listen, Jose Aldo's in this division, Frank Edgar we don't really know, but still, that's a big name that someone sort of on the borderline of the top 15 could probably get, so it is a very important fight for this division, I agree, and I will say this, I don't like the odds where they're at. I do think Nurmagomedov is too much of a favorite, so I can understand picking Stamann for those reasons, but I still like Nurmagomedov Nurmagomedov for the fight pick.
Nurmagomedov, his last time out when he took on Mark Striegel in his UFC debut, was a minus 410 favorite. And he was also a favorite when he took on Raoni Barcelos, minus 125. So for me, going with Cody Stamann, but a good point there by Titanium Shinbone saying it's a bigger cage too, because yeah, that could give a bigger opportunity for Nurmagomedov to get off with that striking. So Matt, we'll move into our next fight, and we have Michel Pereira taking on Andrea Fiallo. And at the start of the week, we went over to the Die Hard MMA podcast, and we're going to pump Clint's tires all day because he's one of those fun guys to pay attention to. Had a great time. I mean, Clint and Tovon Anthony, those are two guys that if you're not checking them out, a lot of fun. Wrong. They're always having fun on Twitter, on Instagram, what have you. But Clint and I both going with Andrea Fiallo. And when I look at this fight starts the second round. It's minus 225. That's the first leg of the question mark kicks parlay. I think this is going to be an amazing fight. I absolutely love it. But I like Fiallo's durability to try and kind of figure out the game plan in the first round, make it into the second round. I don't think Pereira is going to get finished in the first round. So that's why I'm thinking of it that way. But I really do love this fight. Matt, Ricardo, hopefully it's Ricardo. You're coming from Mexico, so it's probably Ricardo. Love from Mexico. Love the Allens. Appreciate you.
Never been to Mexico, but I'd love to go. Here's the thing. Andre Fiallo is going to have a great chance to win this fight, and this is my only problem with putting money on when the fight's going to stop, because I think this fight's going to end before the judges are ever called into question, and that's why I find it hard to say, okay, will it end in the first, second, or third round? I don't think it's going to go to the distance. I just don't know who's going to get the finish, because with Pereira, let's say he is landing massive knees to the body, leg kicks, he's really setting up his strikes effectively, then he very well could get a TKO at any point throughout this fight, but of course, myself, like everybody who's ever watched him fight, is worried about his gas tank. And if Fiallo is able to start breaking him down, start getting closer and closer every single round, because that's the thing you have to watch for. Don't just watch for the strikes that land. Watch the distance between these two, because every inch that Fiallo gets closer to Pereira, he's going to become that much more dangerous, and that's going to be something to keep your eye on. But I think every time he's going to close the distance, he's going to put himself at massive risk of getting knocked out, because I know Pereira hasn't got a lot of knockouts recently, but people forget just how explosive this guy is. Now, Nico Price was able to eat some pretty big shots, but Price is one of the best chins in the UFC, and I do think Pereira is bound to get a finish at some point.
Fiallo struggles against long-range attackers, like he did in the first round against Vic, but when he's able to close the distance, there you go. And in his other fights, it's the same thing. Once he figures out that distance, once he's able to pressure forward, if you like Calvin Kattar last weekend, Andrea Fiallo is a bigger version. He doesn't throw a ton of kicks, but when he does, they matter. And when he wrestles, it really is good. And he does wrestle more than a Calvin Kattar, but that's what I absolutely love about this fight, Matt. We have a look at the odds for this one. I had mentioned it. Fiallo came in an underdog. He's still an underdog. Open a plus 210. He's plus 226. Michelle open a minus 250. He's a minus 279. And if we have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes on this one, oh man, 85% going with Michel Pereira and 15% with Fiallo. I'm fine if I get it wrong with Andrea Fiallo, but Matt, I saw a lot of people out there in the comments on the UFC's YouTube videos. They're like, man, this fight isn't a pay-per-view fight. I don't care, because I was looking forward to it last week. This is one of my favorite fights on the card.
This is going to be a phenomenal fight, because where both guys are going to have the most success is where they're also going to be at the highest risk of getting knocked out, and those normally result in the best fights, but I do like Michelle in this one. I think it's going to be a great fight, though.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun as well. So, Matt, we look at our next fight. We get into the title fights. Brandon Moreno is taking on Davison Figueiredo. This is the third installment. The first one, it ended by draw, but obviously it was the cup check by Davison Figueiredo. He loses a point. Again, depending on where you stand on that one, I think it's fine. I'm fine with Herzog taking a point. They talk about that in the referee and fighter and corner meetings. You can't do it. If you happen to do it, listen, you're going to lose a point. So we end up with the rematch. And in the rematch, Brandon Moreno drops Figueiredo in the first round. The second round's pretty competitive. Like, I was happy to see Figueiredo kind of regain his bearings, able to go out there and match fire with fire. And then in the third round, it was all Moreno. So I absolutely love that one. But I think this is going to be such a fun fight, because for Moreno, he was the underdog in the second fight. He's a favorite coming into the third fight. And Figueiredo switching gyms, having the energy of Walid Ismail and Eric Albarracin. Being in that room, to be a fly on the wall, there's probably a lot of yelling, a lot of singing, and a lot of bravado. And a lot of glasses with no, either no lenses or chainmail.
Like festive times.
Chainmail. A lot of fun. So I can't wait for this fight, Matt. I think it's going to be so much fun. But for Brandon Moreno, he is really headlining this card, not just for his home nation of Mexico, but for Entram Gym, who have 4 other fighters competing here. I love the fight. So what are you saying here?
This is a great fight, and my prediction's Brandon Moreno, but I'm going to give you guys a lot of reasons why I think he might lose tonight, because I think Figueiredo is going to be a much better version than the guy who showed up for their second fight. I think he was a little full of himself, and I think he knew what we knew. He kind of won the first fight if it wasn't for the point taken away. Now, that's his fault. You're the one who's in charge of your weapons, because that's another part that they tell you in those fighter meetings. Like, hey, you're responsible for the strikes that you throw. And maybe that did take something away from Brandon Moreno. Now, he came on stronger after the cup check happened anyways, so... And it was a draw. I think Figueiredo thought he was better than Moreno after the first fight, and I thought he was going to walk into the second one and just blow the doors off Moreno. I really did think, and this is just me, I thought it was sort of this was the best version of Brandon Moreno fighting the worst version of Figueiredo, because a lot of people forget, he had just fought Alex Perez, there was the quick turnaround, he had just cut weight, so I think we're going to see the best version of Figueiredo we've seen in the trilogy against Moreno, and saying that, you might be thinking, hey, well, he won the first fight, if we see a better version, is he going to win the third fight? The difference is, I think Moreno's way better too, and the big difference that we even saw in their second fight is, no matter what, Brandon Moreno's quite a bit faster than Devison Figueiredo. Figueiredo has the power, and he does have really good timing too, because since he is the slower guy, he almost has to be smarter because of it.
A guy who's 22-1 has good timing?
I know, it's weird how that works, but you understand, like, when you're the slower guy, you have to be a little bit craftier about how you set up your strikes. Luke Thomas had a big point about Dustin Poirier, where he's not the hardest puncher, he's not the fastest puncher, but he's just so technical and has really good timing that he finds a way to get from point A to point B. Figueiredo is cut from the same cloth to where he's not the fastest guy, but when he hits you, you feel it. So I think this fight's going to come down to how many strikes can Moreno land before Figueiredo lands his one big bomb. Because if you go back to their second fight, when Moreno would crowd the distance, use his body hooks, and then go up top, Figueiredo couldn't deal with that at all. He had a really hard time at that boxing range, but again, this fight's going to be great. And let's say Figueiredo hits Moreno with a big shot early. Let's say he is able to hurt him. What version of Moreno is going to come out in that second, third, fourth, and fifth round, knowing that Figueiredo has the power to put him down?
62% of the fans have Moreno, 38% going with Figueiredo. Matt the Mick hitting us up in the super chat for the pop fund, so definitely appreciate that, Matt the Mick. The super chat's been popping off. There's about 600 people tuning in and only 162 total likes. Matt, when I look at this one, yeah, you're right. I mean, Figueiredo, it's timing with the power, with decent volume, with decent kicks, and when he needs to take guys down, he can do that too. Now, again, this is kind of one of those fights. I'd love to be in a room watching this with GCA Formiga. Maybe we could get him on for one of these Fight Night Picks companions. You never know. But I think this is such a fun one because Moreno, like you said, he's constantly evolving, constantly growing. And if you look at his fight that he had over with LFA, I mean, man, like, that was a guy that wanted to be back in the UFC, and since he's been back, he's put on very impressive performances. And listen, a draw against Askar Askarov, it's hard to look good against Askar Askarov. Okay? Like, look how good Askarov's looked against everybody else. He outboxed Joseph Benavidez, and he's a grappler. He beat Pantoja. He is a very, very fun guy to watch. But, Matt, when I do look at this fight, again, we talked about the odds. Figueiredo coming in here, the underdog, open to plus 155. He's a plus 157 or thereabouts. Moreno open to minus 185. He's minus 187. We talked about the votes. We talked about the fight. It is a tough one to pick. I mean, I know at the start of the week we said Moreno, so on and so forth, but this is one of those ones that's really, really tough.
It is, but I do have to side with Moreno. The last version that we saw of him was a pound-for-pound great type of fighter, and let's say he does make another big jump between the first and second Moreno fight, and he makes a similar one between the second and this one. Who knows what version of him we're going to see, and what I never worry about with Brandon Moreno is his cardio. That's one thing that you can call into question with basically every single fighter on the UFC roster, other than like a handful of the greats. Like Kamaru Usman, I'm pretty confident he won't tire out. Max Holloway. I've long said this. If fights didn't have time limits, Brandon Moreno would be undefeated. Now, Pantoja submitted him on The Ultimate Fighter. That's the only time he's ever been stopped. But he has tremendous cardio to where he's the same fighter in the fifth round that he is in the first round, no matter what the output was in the middle rounds. That really is important because a lot of guys' cardio comes down to how they manage their own output, to where Moreno, it's just like a mental hurdle that he's kind of passed, to where it's like, okay, I know I'm going to get tired, it's going to happen, I'll deal with that after the fight. And I do think the pace that he pushes on Figueiredo is really going to wear him down.
Waji, we definitely appreciate you, and I see it over there in the comment section too. Kyle the Doc saying Moreno back-to-back subs would be a stretch, but it could happen. Yep. Just my 2 cents saying, can't fool me 3 times. Got to take Moreno. Prince Vegeta's son saying Moreno by decision, and myself saying Figgy taking back his strap. But myself, I've got Moreno.
What do we do if Figueiredo wins? You have a draw, a win, and a win. So they're still kind of tied. Like, is this going to be the first ever, like,
That's Four Kings type territory.
Like, it would be neat. And the flyweight division's in great shape right now. I know there was conversation a few years ago of getting rid of the division. Of course, the UFC traded probably their best pound-for-pound fighter for a very popular one from one championship. But it's had a great revival ever since. You have guys like Brandon Moreno who market this division extremely well. Figueiredo himself, I know he's been sort of cringe this week, but at least he's trying to market this fight. And that's all you can ask for. And when you look at the other top fighters in the division, like you said, Askar Askarov, a tremendously dynamic fighter, very entertaining. Pantoja has a win over the champion. Like, the flyweight division's in great shape right now. Kai Kara France is all of a sudden at the top. Like, I think this is one of the better divisions in the UFC.
You've got Derek saying, been watching for about 6 months. First companion with y'all tonight. Look forward to it. I can't wait. Like, the breaking the fourth wall here and not just being the weird, analyst just kind of messing around with MMA knowledge in my head. I couldn't be more excited for the Fight Night Picks Companion tonight. I absolutely love this card. Like, I've amped myself up so much for it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So, hey, I can't wait for it. That one's going to start 15 minutes before the main card. You sync up, you have a good time, and we're looking at pushing more of those out this year. And some other content, too, like Early Stoppage just dropped last night. That was a fun one. Is the fight between Poirier and Diaz going to be something? We've got episodes coming out, Perry Encounter for next week, too, in the absence of the fight. So, a lot of fun stuff with Fight Night Picks. Brandon Jackson saying, I'm glad I started following UFC more. It's a great time to be an MMA fan, too, Brandon. So, we'll move into our main event of the evening. Francis Ngannou taking on Cyril Gane. And I said it at the start of this show, but it's one of those ones where you got to kind of take a back seat. I'm going to make a weird baseball reference. I'm going to bring it back into MMA because there's a lot of people out there that aren't going to be baseball fans, but for the few of you that are, you're going to understand it. Jace Tingler was the manager of the Padres at the start of this year. He put himself above the team and the players by calling out his star player who's on the cover of the MLB The Show video game saying, listen, it's got to be about the team. You can't pimp the home runs. You can't swing 3-0 and hit a giant jack. Yes, you can, Jace. Have fun. I don't like it when the coach makes himself more than the fight, and that's what's happening this week. I don't like Ferdinand Lopez coming out and talking so much. And listen, MMA, every single MMA media outlet, ourselves included, if we could and if we were boots on the ground, I'd be putting the Ferdinand Lopez content out there. I'd be asking him questions, but I just don't like it when a coach is getting a little bit more attention or is on the same level as both fighters in this fight, and it's got to be weird if you're Cyril Gane.
Okay, I do agree, but here's the thing. I've never once looked at this fight and thought, damn, Cyril Gane's coach talks a lot more, so he might get knocked out more. Like, yes, that stuff, it's weird, but I don't think that has that much to do with this fight, to be completely honest. It's just strange how emotional he has seemed. Like, for Ferdinand Lopez, like, I don't care what you feel personally about either one of these fighters. They're both amazing heavyweights, but, like, Francis Ngannou, to me, seems like he's very much moved past that, and he doesn't care about the rivalry whatsoever. And Cyril Gane, honestly, seems like he's cut from the same cloth. Like, the friction between these guys doesn't seem all that severe. Like, the UFC's really been pushing the one time Francis Ngannou walked through a hallway and, like, probably didn't expect Cyril Gane to be there. If that's the thing that you have to push to market this fight, it kind of tells you that there isn't true bad blood. It reminds me of, remember when Wonderboy fought Woodley for the second time, and they did that, like, charade thing together on, like, that UFC Fight Night show with Kenny Florian and Karen Bryan? It was just weird. It was like, okay, you're talking crap to each other in the media, but we've got you guys in the same room. How about we do Conor McGregor impressions? Wouldn't that be really fun? Like, you can just tell that the bad blood isn't all that serious, and to me, I don't really care. It is odd that the coach seems to be the one who's the most hurt by all this trash talk, and neither one of the fighters really care. Now, I said earlier on in this show that when I do predict a fight, I try to pick the person who's better at MMA. And here's the thing. Cyril Gane's the better MMA fighter in this fight. And I doubt anybody would disagree with me on that. Like, even Eric Nixick and the boys at Extreme Couture would say, hey, Cyril Gane's probably the more well-rounded mixed martial artist. But Francis Ngannou has the greatest eraser we've ever seen in the sport of MMA. And I know that's a term that gets overused. It's something like Paulo Costa's nickname is the eraser. But when Francis Ngannou hits you, you go to sleep. And I see a lot of people bring up, oh, well, Cyril's the better wrestler. What if he takes it to the ground? This is the way I look at this fight. If Cyril decides to wrestle, it's because something seriously wrong has happened to him on the feet. Because he is a natural striker. He's not coming into this fight thinking, oh, I'm going to shoot double legs on Francis Ngannou. Because, hey, Stipe Miocic couldn't do that. And if Stipe can't do it, I don't think Cyril Gane can. So I always go back to, if you think Gane's going to grapple in this fight, it's probably because something isn't going his way on the feet. And in my mind, fine. If one thing doesn't go well for you on the feet against Francis, you're going to sleep.
I wonder if it's going to be one of those ones where Cyril kind of puts both hands out, pulls back, does it a little early.
Alistair Overeem did that, and he got hit by the biggest uppercut we've ever seen.
Just to see what happens, just to try and see what he can get and try and mess up the timing of Ngannou, because I can see this first round being one where it might be a feeling out process, which sounds strange because, again, Ngannou against Rosenstrike. Ngannou against most guys. Like, it really is, the opportunity for Francis Ngannou to get a first-round knockout, to really go out there, prove the doubters wrong, to make his money, to try and book it with either, who could it be? Who would be the ultimate boxing partner for a guy like Francis Ngannou? Would it be Eddie Hearn? Would it be, who would it be?
Like promoter or trainer?
Would it be Della Hoya, promoter?
I don't know. It really put me on the spot.
Zuffa Boxing.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Like, if they did Zuffa Boxing, headlined by Francis Ngannou versus, like, Jake Paul, that'd be great. Like, that would be a great way to start it. Because here's the thing about Zuffa Boxing. You can only tell me about it for 10 years without it happening before I don't care about it anymore. And we're starting to teeter on that.
It is a really, really tough one. But when you look at this one, Cyril Gane, the Muay Thai, the head movement, the switching of the stances, the striking defense, if it is takedowns, it is the submission abilities too, and the things that he can threaten. But again, I'm going to push back a little bit, and the head and arm choke is great against Pessoa. The heel hook is great at the end of the fight against Don'Tale Mayes. Pessoa and Don'Tale Mayes are unranked fighters. Mayes could be a ranked fighter one day.
They're barely UFC fighters.
Mayes could be a ranked fighter one day. Pessoa, no. So when it comes to a guy like Francis Ngannou, I love the takedown defense that he was able to show against Stipe in their second fight. I thought that was so interesting. He's so more well improved from fight 1 to fight 2 that he had against Miocic. When I look at this one, I see a lot of people saying either the disrespect or you're counting out Francis Ngannou. He opened a minus 190. He's a plus 123 right now. Gane opened a plus 165. He's a minus 146. So let's see, Matt, at Fight Night Picks for the total votes. It's really, really close. 52% Ngannou, 48% with Cyril Gane. You see it up there at the vote here on YouTube. 658 total votes. 54% Ngannou, 46% Gane. So everybody's really close. Just name saying you're from the future. Gane wins by submission.
Wow.
I think it's going to be a highly technical fight, but man, Francis Ngannou can knock him out easy.
And I think that's what's going to happen, if I'm being completely honest, because Gane has one weird wrinkle in his game that makes no sense to me. His accuracy with his hooks up close are terrible. And it's weird. Like, when Derek Lewis kind of, like, shelled up against the cage, Cyril Gane had a really hard time hitting him clean when he was going for the finish. Now, yes, he was able to start adding the leg kicks, knees to the body, and everything else together, but when they were at that weird close range, Gane did have a hard time getting the finish. And in my mind's eye, if he hurts Francis and just rushes in trying to get the finish, and if he has a hard time getting him out of there quick, he's going to walk into a big bomb. If he's fighting on the outside and he's not perfect for like almost half an hour, because that's how long a title fight is, then he's going to get knocked out. And if he does mess up even one takedown, like we talk about Travis Brown elbows a lot and stuff like that, but Francis Ngannou knocked out Cain Velasquez with like a Bruce Lee 2-inch punch. And I understand Cain was past his prime. He hurt his knee on that. That was weird. But still, he knocked out one of the greatest fighters ever with a punch that no one saw because it landed from so close. This is the power we're dealing with. I see a few people saying Francis doesn't really have one-punch knockout power. Have you never watched the guy fight? I understand some guys have been able to eat a shot here and there, but when he lands a clean shot on people, they go down and there's no reaction afterwards. Like, Stipe ate a bomb, went down, gets up, eats another one, and goes down immediately. Stipe might be the most durable heavyweight we've ever seen before, and even he wasn't able to eat Francis' power.
And he had just had the wars against Cormier, and he had some wild fights along the way, and I saw the question up there. I want to go back to it. That's why I have my head down. From Laos Dancing, is Usman with Ngannou this time? I saw Usman around the weigh-ins. I see on his Instagram that he is in Vegas. He was with Ali Abdelaziz, Cejudo, and so on and so forth. I do have Cyril Gane in this fight, and listen, all week I keep thinking he's going to back up, he's going to get knocked out. He's going to back up, he's going to get knocked out. And I keep wanting to make the switch, but I won't. I'm going with Cyril Gane. Again, the question there from Kyle the Duck, I wonder what Gane's chin is like. He got hit pretty hard by Volkov in a couple of spots, but Volkov doesn't hit as hard as Francis Ngannou. Nobody really does. So I think it's going to be an amazing fight, Matt, and I think it's going to be a great one. We're split on this one, but I think it's such a fun fight at heavyweight, and we've had these fights. I mean, the DC Stipe trilogy. We had DC fighting Derek Lewis. Like, we've had some interesting enough heavyweight fights, but
Cain JDS.
This is one like that Yeah, there's a lot of hype around it, but I think it's justified, and I'm surprised there's not even more. Like, I love this one.
It's the most technical heavyweight ever against the hardest hitting heavyweight ever. It should sell itself. It really should. Now, I understand the UFC has a weird thing with Francis right now because they don't like paying athletes what they're worth. That's what I've been told, because it's very true. And it would be nice for Francis just to win and be like, listen, you're going to give me what I'm worth now because you have no other option. Like, it would just kind of be a win for all the other fighters. So, if nothing else, it'd be great for the other fighters in the roster if Francis wins.
This should be such a good fight. And as you always know, with question mark kicks, we go all the way back from the bottom to the top one more time. If anybody out there, the 624 right now, missed any of the picks and wants to get their shot at throwing theirs in the comment section, please do so and toss a like and subscribe so you know when we go live with Fight Night Picks Companion later on for the main card. We're going to have a great time hanging out, a little bit less pressure, a little bit less quick of the talking. So Matt, we'll throw it on back to the bottom of this card. Kay Hansen taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. Very close fight. I'm going with Kay Hansen, but if Jasmine's able to go out there, get a decision win, wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the world to me.
I'd be kind of surprised if it was by decision, if I'm being honest. Because for me, I think Jasmine kind of needs a stoppage just based on her cardio from previous fights. I could be wrong, but I do think if anything Hansen has that sort of separates herself from the average unranked contender, she can keep a pace for a very, very long time, even with a lot of output. So I do like Hansen in this one.
All right, Matt. We move into our next fight, Silvana Gomez Juarez. I've got Vanessa Demopoulos, but again, Gomez Juarez can go out there and outstrike Vanessa Demopoulos. We all know that to be true. Vanessa Demopoulos needs to get it to the mat. Will she be able to do it? I think she will, but it's going to be a tough test, so I can't wait to see this fight.
I agree, but here's my thing with Demopoulos. Every fight she has, I feel like could be her last. Like, I don't look at her as, oh, she's gonna, again, have 7-8 fights in the UFC. Like, she's gonna be that sort of entry-level competition for a lot of fighters, I think, coming in. And she's probably gonna serve that Hannah Cifers role for a little while. So, take that for what it's worth. I think she'll win, but I look at her like a Hannah Cifers.
All right, Matt. Our next fight, we have Matt Frevola and Genaro Valdez. And the commentary, over there in the comment section, a lot of people going with Genaro Valdez to get the win. I've got Matt Frevola in this fight.
I'm Matt Frevola, but I'm very worried because, again, if Valdez wins, it's going to be that, like, spectacular KO submission, something very eye-catching, but Frevola is such a good wrestler that I think he can fall back on that in this fight.
Should be a very, very fun fight, Matt. Tony Gravely taking on the man himself, Simon Oliveira. I'm going with Tony Gravely here.
I like Gravely in this matchup, but it's going to be interesting because I feel like there's a version of him that could get into the top 15, but he is going to have to shore up a few holes in his game, and I feel like this is one of those fights that sort of gets him moving in that direction.
All right, Matt. Corey McGregor, I feel like you guys are super wrong. We could be, and that's all right.
Before.
Jack Della Maddalena taking on Pete Rodriguez. We're here for a good time. We're just having fun, Matt.
Not a long time, so have a good time because the sun can't shine every day.
There's a trooper record somewhere here, but I've got Jack Della in this fight. But again, this is another one of those ones. P. Rodriguez wins by knockout. Everybody's going to be really excited.
Exactly. It's going to be one of those wild Chaos Williams type knockouts, but I do like Jack Della Maddalena more in this fight. He's just the better mixed martial artist, and again, he's the much faster guy too, and that's a big, big key.
Matt Howney Barcelos taking on Victor Henry, going with Howney in this one, but he is a juiced favorite.
He is. But Victor Henry, like your first fight in the UFC, you have to fight Howney Barcelos. That's not an agreement that you're excited to sign for. Like, I feel like there's a lot of other guys whose names you probably have in your mind who are sort of more of the entry-level type fights before you get to Howney Barcelos.
Corey McGregor was talking about that Frevola pick, yeah. Was it what's his brother's name? Was it James Frevola that fills up the comment section? Was that who stepped on?
Do I feel good about picking a guy who I just saw get knocked out in 10 seconds, then the fight before that lose every single round? No, not at all. But I think he's still a little bit better than the guy who he's fighting tonight. That's all I can say.
We get up to the main card. This part's going to be covered on the Fight Night Picks Companion. We have Michael Morales, Trevin Giles. I switched the pick. I've got Trevin Giles in this fight.
I like Trevin Giles quite a bit. I think we're going to see the best version of him down at 170 pounds. And if we do get that version, he's a borderline top 15 talent.
All right, Matt. We go into our next fight. Cody Stamann taking on Said Nurmagomedov. It's another one. I'm going with Cody Stamann here.
I like Nurmagomedov. I think he's the faster fighter. Now, is there a world where Stamann... Like, do you think Stamann, when he was a kid, watched a Jake Shields fight and was like, I want to be like him
when I grow up?
He watched
Dan Severn. It was a Michigan thing.
I feel like he'd have a juicy upper lip.
Well, he did have it was mentioned there in the comments section, he did have the Yellowstone look this week. Cowboy hat, poofy jacket.
Never watched it. Here's the thing. I think Nurmagomedov's faster, and I do think that's the key to this one.
You gotta watch that show. It's such a good show. All right, Matt. Listen, we've got Michelle Pereira taking on...
How many 50-year-old divorced dads are saying that right now? Like, oh, you gotta watch it. Yellowstone's so good. That's what you say.
If you like Longmire, you'd like Yellowstone. Michelle Pereira taking on Andrea Fiallo. I've got this to go to the second round, and I've got Andrea Fiallo in the fight, too.
I think Michelle's going to be able to use his kicks really effectively in this matchup, but if Fiallo can close the distance, he'll probably elbow himself to a win, but I do like Pereira in this. I don't see it going the distance, though, no matter who wins.
All right, Matt, I love this fight. Like, this is my favorite fight on the card. I've got Brandon Moreno.
Craig, be honest. Like, this is everyone's favorite fight on the card. Quit being a hipster.
I jack myself up
Andre
all week
Fiallo's not better than the trilogy for the flyweight title.
I got so excited about it. But when I look at this one, Matt, Brandon Moreno taking on Deiveson Figueiredo, I've got Moreno as the second leg of the question mark kicks parlay. So I've got Moreno in the fight to go to the second round in Fiallo and Pereira. And that is a scary proposition for me. So I'm only going to put a bag of popcorn on it, and I'm just going to watch and have fun.
I think this could be a phenomenal fight. Again, we don't have this as our fight of the night contender. If we think it's just going to be one-way traffic, one way or the other, it's going to be great because both guys are so well-rounded. But again, speed really matters in MMA. And Brandon Moreno is one of the fastest guys in really all of MMA. And he's got cardio to match his speed. And it's not like his speed falls off when he does get tired. So I like Moreno. But again, this is going to be a great fight. The fans are going to win no matter what.
A lot of people talking about Yellowstone. I mean, hey, the last season sucked.
Some people couldn't get into it.
Francis Ngannou taking on Ciryl Gane in the main event. We're split on this one. But again, this is such a fun fight. Again, the technician of Ciryl Gane, the punching power of Francis Ngannou, who isn't just a power puncher. He's added technique as his MMA game has gone on. And it's kind of funny, a guy at 35, he's at his prime, which you normally don't say in the other weight classes.
Exactly, but heavyweights don't, like... Okay, there was a point where like 11 of the top 15 heavyweights were above 40. It wasn't a great time in the division, and I think it was 8 months ago. So this isn't the deepest division in the UFC, but it's a great sign. Like if Francis can win this fight, he still probably has another 3 to 4 years of fighting around his prime left before he does start to fall off. So if he is able to stick around the UFC, which if you like MMA, you're probably hoping for that, then he should be able to get it, or not should be able to get it done, but he should be able to be fighting for a lot longer.
Corey McGregor, definitely appreciate that super chat. And the best part about the show, you can agree with the picks, you can disagree with the picks, you can stomp on the grave if you want to, but overall, it is a lot of fun to do these shows. So we really do like just making the picks, watching the fights, and previewing, doing the analysis. That's the most fun part to me. Because the most fun part to me is doing those fight companions, talking about what could happen, what is happening, and so on and so forth. And if we can add a little bit to you when you're watching those fights, that's really the goal here.
Exactly. Like, think about how smart you guys can sound with your... No, I'm kidding. But it's going to be a great time. Hopefully everyone has a great time watching the fights. It should be a phenomenal pay-per-view. First one of 2022. So if you are gambling, hopefully you get it off on the right track.
Yeah, Matt. And listen, the one other thing I have to say, if you like this heavyweight fight coming up, Tom Aspinall, Alexander Volkov is going to knock your socks off. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you check out the Fight Night Picks Companion later on tonight. Enjoy the fights out there and have a good time. And listen, Matt, as we always say with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it. Woo!